Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we are now recording, and if Val join us.
Hi, Nick.
Good evening.
Hello.
I'm
Hello.
partner.
Evening.
So this is my wife Sam as well.
Hello.
Evening, Sam.
I don't know whether you were hearing our sort of conversations earlier, but I thought that when we get to the planning applications, we'll take yours first as you're here.
Oh,
rather
thank
than
you.
make
Thank you very
sit
much.
through some other ones, one of which might take a while.
Okay.
So I'm David Chappell, I'm the chair of the meeting, and the first item is to receive apologies for absence, and I gather there's one from Councillor Glenn.
Yeah.
And do we accept those apologies, presumably?
We do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Item 2 is representations from interested parties. I suspect that perhaps the simplest thing to do is that when we get to the application in respect of Lawn House and Lawn Cottage, if we decide that there is some information that we require, we'll simply let the applicants provide it to us. So item 3 is, I'm assuming there are no other interested parties since there isn't anybody else on the screen. So item 3 is declarations of interest. So are there any disclosable pecuniary interests?
No.
Any other interests?
No.
No. Sorry, my son's watching the football. You might have heard him in the background.
Right. So that brings us on to the minutes of the previous meeting. That's the meeting that was held on the 5th of January. Present myself, Councillor Fuller, Councillor Humphreys, Councillor Chesser and Councillor Glenn. They've been circulated. Somebody like to propose them if you're happy with them?
I'll propose.
Councillor
I'm
Fuller,
happy with
Second.
Councillor Humphreys, all those in favour? That's all of us. I will sign those in due course. Which brings us neatly onto the planning applications. So we don't have to keep our guests waiting too long. As I said, I thought what we might do is move straight on to that one. Now, what our applicants won't know is that before each meeting, I've gone through the various applications and I usually provide a little report to fellow councillors. And I think that in fairness to the people whose application we are considering, and particularly since it's not that long, I'm just going to read out what I wrote down. So this is an application, both for full and listed building consent, in respect of Lawn House and Lawn Cottage, which are 38 Market Place, and it's a change of use from dwelling, category C3, to a guest house, category C1. The properties, which I'm sure we're probably all familiar with, but they're in Jericho. They're in the conservation area, described as having 18th century fabric with 19th and 20th century alterations. If change of use is granted, there will be a further application in due course for listed building consent for the refurbishment of the properties. There is currently parking on site for 3 vehicles. The proposals do not alter the driveway nor the parking conditions, which isn't surprising as it's for a change of use only. The design and access statement refers to the parking available at the town's long stay car park as being plentiful, and to the availability of short stay car parking in the area, as well as parking in Marketplace. The intention of the application, as I read it, was to convert the properties into an upmarket B&B with 6 or 7 bed spaces, the intention being that guests would have a minimum 2-night stay. And when I looked on the ENC portal yesterday, and I confess I haven't had a chance to do it today, there were no recorded comments or objections, save for environmental protection, which indicated it had no comment. Lisa, you've got your hand
I
up.
checked just before we came online this evening, and there's 3 comments, and they're all in full support of this development.
Ah, well, that's
Yeah.
interesting to know. So bear in mind, this is an application for change of use. We're not at this stage concerned with what the plans may or may not be for refurbishing the property. It is simply the concept of whether the use of these buildings moves from being purely residential to use as a boarding house, guest house. And I guess the first observation I would make is that when we were working on our neighbourhood plan, one of the things that we did recognise was that there was a dearth of provision in this area within the town. And therefore, it may well be felt, forget for the moment the specifics of the application, but in general terms, that we might very well be rather enthusiastic about bringing this sort of use into the town area for the, frankly, the economic benefit that it might generate for the town centre. That said, since there are only two other councillors, before I say anything further, I'm just going to go to each of you in turn. So for no particular reason, David Fuller, do you have any observations, comments, or indeed questions for Mr. and Mrs. Reid?
No questions. Brilliant idea. I'm happy. I think it's great. Well done.
That's short and sweet and to the point. Clive.
I agree completely. Yeah, it's a great idea. It's a very good use of that building. I mean, my one question really, it's not a doubt, is when you say you're going to use the long-term car park, are you thinking, because am I right in thinking that the garden of Lawn House has an entrance onto the car park?
On the floor.
My recollection is from when I was last in that property, because I used to be well acquainted with a former owner of it, that I'm pretty sure there is indeed a gateway that does enter the car park.
There is.
I'm sure Mr. and Mrs. Reid will tell us if it's no longer usable.
There's absolutely there is a gate that is an access into the co-op car park at the rear.
Yeah.
But obviously, what anybody staying there, we would in with their joining instructions, be looking for them to stay in the overstay car park. The long stay is Herne. Is it Herne car park?
Yeah.
Herne Hill.
I mean, this is what I'm coming to in a roundabout way is always, and you're obviously very well aware of it, is the amount of parking that isn't in Oundle is a concern to everybody. I mean, I don't think it will be, but do you intend using that sort of back gate as an entrance into the property for people that would be staying if they were parking in that car park? I mean, it's out of curiosity more than anything else.
No, well, we haven't. That's not part of our plan at the moment. I mean, one thing, we're obviously in the middle of the purchase. We are with that gate, just making sure, because obviously it's got listed building consent.
Yeah.
That's one of our questions in terms of has that gate got, listed buildings where we're having a full survey carried out. It wouldn't, inevitably what we would be doing is using the front of the house and the gated entrance to be able as a drop off, and then obviously directing people around. I mean, it's only a short walk from that car park anyway, that long stay, so that's not our intention at this point in time.
I mean, I only raise it because it's always our concern in the town is parking.
Yes.
The amount of, if you've got 7 guests and they've got 7 cars, then they've got to go somewhere. I mean, that's the same as any progression of anything.
Yeah, and
it'd be inevitable.
And one of the, obviously, our considerations in terms of our market research and before, obviously acquiring this building is that we've on numerous occasions done checks of the car park, so it's on the long stay car park overnight to see what the occupancy of a car park was. We've sort of like satisfied ourselves that, I think we got up to a count of 10 cars in the long stay car park, maximum on all the nights that we've checked. So it wouldn't be. We want to open this and be successful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's great that you've done sort of due diligence really in your research. I mean, you wouldn't be doing it if you didn't think it would work. obviously, and that's great to hear. So yeah, no, I have absolutely no,
Thanks a
other
lot.
than that, those few questions, no objection at all.
Yes, I mean, it did strike me that in an ideal world, there would be on-site parking that reflected the number of potential occupants. However, as somebody who has stayed in this kind of accommodation throughout Europe, many is the occasion when you park in a parking area, sometimes a very short walk, sometimes a rather longer walk away from the accommodation, and has been observed, frankly, overnights. There's plenty of parking available in the long stay. Certainly wouldn't want to encourage people to be staying in the short stay car park for here. But it does seem to me that there is effectively adequate overnight parking available. And certainly it seems to me that this undoubtedly would be an asset to the town. So
I would agree. I think I've just looked at the Swallows Rest and thank you. Bringing
Right.
something quality. So yeah.
Well, it strikes me that we have the option of making no comment or objecting, or indeed it is possible for us to say that the council actually supports an application. Now, I am getting a distinct feel this evening that we might actually positively support this application for change of use. It doesn't mean to say that we might not be critical when it comes to the actual plans for the refurbishment because it's a listed building, so don't get too excited too quickly. But would I be right in saying that perhaps we should indicate a support for this application?
Most definitely.
Definitely.
Right. Well, there it is.
Thank
We
you very
support
much.
your application. Thank you for joining us.
And good
You
luck.
don't have to leave us. You're
luck.
welcome to stay, but I dare say you may want to leave us and find another way of entertaining yourselves for the evening.
All right, very much. Good night.
Thank
No,
you.
Good night.
Bye.
Take
Bye.
care. Bye.
That was
And
brilliant.
then there were three. Well, technically there were four, but there were three of us. So if we work back onto the agenda in the order in which they appear on the agenda and in my report, the first application
Here's our
is, well, you look at it and initially I thought, oh, an application about trees at the Great Hall. And then I actually turned up the documentation. There are 45 documents, the vast majority of which are plans showing trees in locations all over the shop.
Yeah.
And then there is 130, I can't remember whether it's 137 or 139 page document, which seems to look at it tree by tree across the estate. I have to confess, that was the point at which I gave up, thinking
I think it's
it
going
would
to
be impossible to plough through this and then provide the council with any specific information.
Yeah.
And
46 documents now.
yeah,
But then, well, I think
against that background, it struck me that realistically, the tree officer will work very closely with the school, or perhaps I should put it the other way around. And that this is certainly one of those occasions when we would defer to the tree officer. A lot of it will no doubt constitute tree husbandry anyway, which we wouldn't normally make a fuss about. But I couldn't sit here and say there is nothing in there about tree removal because I simply don't know. And I hadn't got hours and hours and hours and hours to spend to
This is
try
a
and
big
work
one.
out whether there was or wasn't.
absolutely right, Chair. It's I think the main concern is it goes on into that one about the pollarded limes in the.
Yes, well, we'll come on to that one as a
concern.
separate application in a minute. But in terms of this one, are you just happy that we indicate that we've defer to the view of the tree officer on the works programme as a whole?
I agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. We now come on to an interesting application. Interesting in the sense that here we go again. there are certain staples that we get on planning meetings. The Riverside is one that pops up every now and again, and it seems to me that Pembroke House is another. I'm sure we're all fairly familiar with Pembroke House. In its day, it was quite an imposing property. In its latter part, it could have done with a good deal of refurbishment. Then, sadly, both of the owners, the Sloanes, died. It passed into the hands of the three sons and sat there, and there was more than one planning application that came forward. Then, of course, somebody decided that they were going to light a fire inside the property with predictably disastrous results. So the property is partially burnt out. The last planning application we saw, which we didn't much like, was for a care facility to be built. Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Hi guys, apologies for butting in. Val is trying to get into your meeting, but she can't get in with the codes that have been given.
I'll send them to her again, Tony.
All right, Val, can you hear that?
Yes. So it's just that one line. I don't have to do all this other meeting ID and stuff, do I? Or passcode?
I don't know.
Don't normally.
No,
You
you
just
should
click
just
on the
normally
link.
click on it. I was having problems earlier.
All right. So, okay, Val, well,
Very much, Tony.
yeah. I don't know. Can you exchange phone numbers if Val's got a problem?
She can phone in as well on the link, but it's just simply click on the link at the top, the first link.
All right. Has that come through, Val?
Well, it hasn't yet. It's
Just
probably
sending
gonna
it.
take you a few minutes or
All
something.
right.
Thank you.
No, Emma, Lisa's pretending she's Emma, and it's confusing me.
So does she not want to give me a phone number?
It's just coming through anyway, the link.
Yeah, I've just sent it again, Val.
Thank you.
Can you have a look at that?
It hasn't come yet, but I'll keep my thing on refresh
Okay, then.
as long as I can.
All right, I'll leave you guys to do it then.
Thanks, Tony.
All right, then. Cheers. Bye-bye now.
Right.
Bye.
It might just be worth giving Val a minute or two to see if she can make that connection.
There is a comment on the application, by the way.
Yeah,
About
about the
trees.
trees. About the trees.
Yeah,
Yeah.
trees. Forget everything else. The trees.
Well, yes. So I was saying earlier that the last planning application that we looked at for the site was completely different. That was for the care facility, which we felt was possibly the right facility in the wrong place for a variety of reasons. We said no. ENC said no. The applicants appealed it. The inspectors said no. They appear to have given up on that idea and gone back to a residential use for the site. I am sure that a number of years ago we saw a planning application for 3 relatively large properties on the site, because it is a large site that we take
Yeah.
it. This one's come in for 2, with each with their own detached garage, each with their own separate entrance. The garages themselves having a kind of an upper story serviced by an external staircase, which would have an element of screening to try to prevent overlooking. Roof lights facing, I think, inwards rather than out of the site. And according to the paperwork, the built area of the site would occupy only around about 12% of the site as a whole. The building details, they're all set out in the report, so if you've seen that, I won't necessarily need to repeat it. And when I looked, but obviously things have moved on since Sunday, there was no objection from Environmental Protection, but they did want some conditions, perhaps what I might call the almost usual conditions, restricting the hours during which construction work could take place, and also mitigation measures for dust and no on-site burning for obvious pollution reasons. The site had 2 access points when it was Pembroke House, so that it was possible to drive in one entrance, drive past the property and then go out the other way. This way there would be 2 separate entrances, each 3.5 metres wide, coming out onto Cotterstock Road. Driveways themselves are, I think, a mixture of some form of gravel substance and some sort of block paving. The properties themselves, in terms of design, there is quite a range of style of property on that stretch of the road, and it certainly didn't strike me that there was anything much about the designs that of itself looked out of keeping, and it didn't seem to me that there were likely to be any issues around overlooking. Trees have been mentioned. The actual paperwork talks about there being 2 substantial beech trees towards the front of the property, which, although described as being in poor condition, the plan was to retain each of those because they are an important streetscape. But to get rid of, I think it was some Norway spruce, if I remember rightly. There's already been a measure of site clearance because it had become pretty overgrown. But obviously the idea will be to fully landscape it. And the 2 properties would have what would currently be very nice views down the field, down to the sort of floodplain and the river. However, of course, behind this property is the proposed development site for the extension, which will mean that it all gets largely built over. So that's the application. Comments? Well, I went to you, David, first. I'll go to you, Clive. Obviously, Val is still having problems getting in.
I've sent an email, but she hasn't come back to me.
I think on this application, I think it's, you know, it's something on that site was inevitable. Eventually, they would come up with something, and I think to come down to 2 houses is probably the best we're going to get. I still have reservations about, as you say, the style of them fits everything else that's on Cotterstock Road at that end. I don't think there's anything worrisome about that, but I think the major thing is that, as you've already said, Chair, to be mitigating about the demolition and it being very near the primary school. I mean, with, you know, great eight-wheelers taking rubble away or moving stuff in, I think we should perhaps be quite rigorous in our when the building and demolition happens within certain hours, because I think because it's proximity to the school and the parking that still happens down there, we should be looking at that. As far as the, you know, the building, the plan, I think if they look at the trees at the back and keep the trees, because I looked at it on Google as well, and at the Google plan, it's a very, very big plot, and there are some mature trees at the back of it as well. So I think we should mention trees, all mature trees on the site, and about the building and demolition of the at certain times of the day. That's my only comment.
Val, just so you're aware, you
Sorry
might.
about that. Don't know what the problem was.
No, I had terrible trouble initially, but I managed to start early and somehow resolved it.
Well, I thought I tried to come in 10 minutes early. So obviously there's a problem somewhere.
Oh dear. Well, what we've done, we actually started with the application for change of use of Lawn House and Lawn Cottage.
Right.
Because Mr. and Mrs. Reed, the applicants, had actually asked to attend and did attend. So we took their application first. And in fact, that application was not only not objected to, but was actually fairly strongly supported. Then we've touched on the Oundle School tree works, only to say that we feel that that whole scheme needs to be looked at by the tree officer, who's in a far better position to comment on the detail than are we. And we're now looking at Pembroke House, and Clive's just been talking to us about that. And I was about to ask David for his views, and I think I probably still will, and that'll give you just a moment or two to get your thoughts together first. So David, any thoughts on this one?
Again, it's, as I think Clive mentioned it in his first sentence, it's fine. It's two houses, not more, so I have no problems with that at all.
Fine. Well, that was short and sweet. Val, any particular thoughts about this one?
What was the name's gone out of my mind. Clive talking about.
Clive,
Yeah, no,
what you said.
What I was saying, Val, is the we should try and keep as many mature trees on that site as possible, because that has been one of the objections to it.
Absolutely.
And the other thing is, when they demolish the houses and rebuild them, that should happen, because there's going to be a lot of site traffic demolishing it, that could happen outside or around the school hours, to protect the school children as much as possible.
Can I just ask, do we know if it's changed hands? Because this obviously is a new approach altogether. Because the new people,
as far as I'm aware,
the struggle we've had with the trees.
Yeah, it's the application's gone in from, I think it's Robin Sloan. That, of course, was the home of Jim and Lorna Sloan during their lifetimes. I'm sure you remember them, Val. And when they both died, I think there are 3 boys, and it formed part of the estate. And the previous applications, I think, have all effectively come in through them. They still own the site.
But it might be a different developer. That's really what I'm thinking.
I don't know about the developer that they would use to build these properties if they got permission, or indeed whether they would simply then sell the site with the benefit of planning permission, or quite what the arrangement would be.
I mean, Clive's dead right. We had a big struggle over those trees.
Well, I agree. I think we can certainly indicate that whilst we've no objections in principle to what is proposed, we do want the tree officer to take a careful look at that site and ensure that, so far as practicable, as many mature trees that are there are retained. And I take Clive's point as well about its proximity to the school. And whilst Environmental Protection was saying, well, restrict the work to between 8 AM and 6 PM Monday to Friday, and from 8 AM to 1 PM on Saturdays, whilst I don't think there is a problem with them working on site, I do wonder about traffic movements at a time when the school is open and there are pupils either coming or going, so that it might be, and it's tricky for the the people undertaking the work, but if we could try and keep say 3/4 of an hour straddling kind of coming and going time, sort of 20 minutes either side, both in the mornings and in the afternoons, I think that would be safer and better. As I think, do you, Clive?
Yeah, I don't know if that's even possible, but it would seem.
No, I don't either.
It would seem to me that, because it's only there are only very short spurts of busyness, if you like to call it that, in the daytime. But even so, there's bound to be some kickback from it at some point, or someone's going to get car damaged, because when they demolish something, they use those great big 8-wheeler lorries, and they're going to be trying to pull out into the street and pull in. I don't know if there's any way around it, but it might be something just to point out or mention even.
Val,
They,
and
they
then
can
David.
be told to have a traffic plan. There should be a traffic plan, particularly because of the school,
Mm.
which they have to stick to. I mean, that and the school had one when they were doing the swimming pool stuff.
That's right. Yeah.
It's
Yep.
a thing called a traffic plan,
Right.
which they have.
Well,
Okay.
there we go. That's my comment really.
Yeah.
Yeah, David.
I agree totally with Val. I think if you just talk about the traffic plan and mention the fact it's very close to a school, then they I mean, they must be they're used to building their schools. I mean, schools, you know, how many new buildings are done by a school on a daily basis everywhere? But if we stipulate it, then at least we're making it known that we know, you know, we're not just saying yes.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm sure Lisa's got all of that, and I dare say you'll run it by me before it goes off.
Yeah.
Right. Let's move on. The next one is 17 Hillfield Road, 2-story extension with a first floor side extension. The property kind of sits on a corner, but it's not a corner that goes anywhere. In other words, I think there's a little kind of spur road off. The extensions is a side extension where there is already one. The existing extension runs about half the width of the property. The intention is to create an extension which runs along the full width of the property on both first floor and ground floor. So effectively we move from a 1-story half kind of length extension to a full length one. Materials, etc. I've set out in the note. They're all basically intended to reflect what the existing materials are. And the only comment I saw on the portal yesterday, but it appears quite a few comments have gone on today on various matters that I hadn't seen, was from Highways, who basically said that the proposed works would not mean that any additional parking on site would be required. And it certainly didn't seem to me that what was being proposed would affect the on-site parking in an adverse way. And I must admit, I personally couldn't see any particular issues with this one. Val, we'll start with you first.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with what you've said. I haven't been and looked, so I can't really comment in any kind of positive way, I'm afraid. But from what you've said, it would seem to be okay.
Clive?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think I don't see it as on all these things. It all comes back down to parking. If they don't feel it's going to do anything to the parking, it's not going to really change the street scene very much either. So I think it's yeah, it's a yes from me.
David, any comments?
No, you've said it all.
Right, well, that's perhaps the simplest one of the evening, no objection. Brings us back to some tree works, this time at the primary school in Milton Road. Removing a lime due to its overall poor condition and, as they call it, unsuitable location. Repollarding a number of other lime trees, basically just returning them to how they have been before. And then another tree being removed as a result of recent snow damage. I actually found a bit of a dearth of information on the portal. And I know that former councillor Oakes was frequently complaining that getting information about tree works was sometimes quite difficult. So almost what you see in the note is literally about all that there is to see. There were some plans, although I must admit I actually, and I might have been being dense on Sunday, but I didn't actually quite work out where the tree was that they wanted to remove. And as to whether it is or isn't in poor overall condition, well, there's no sort of tree report by any arboriculturist or anything like that on the site. That suggests to me that we should probably just stick to our normal policy. So in relation to matters of tree husbandry, no particular comment. In relation to the removal of the tree, to ask the tree officer to confirm that it is appropriate for that tree to be removed because of its condition and indeed its location.
Happy with that.
I mean, I think the repollarding, it would just be taking it back to as it used to be. I can remember walking down when my children went there. I can remember them going down and pollarding the trees all the time at the back. So yeah, seems like just doing what they've always done.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think that one's nice and simple. Extraordinarily, I'm sure that last month we had a certificate of lawfulness, and I said, oh,
Yes, we did.
Having seen one of these come up on one of our agendas before, and so promptly we got another one in the following month. This time it's a property at 28 East Road. Strangely, the applicant is called Story, and what is being applied in connection with is a single-story extension. The actual extension works, there's very, very little detail available on the portal, although there is a drawing which indicates how they're going to develop the existing extension, if I can call it that, and make it a kind of full length and width, and therefore create a much more sort of open plan downstairs area. But it's very difficult to say much about it, because whilst there's a plan, there's very little other detail. Nor was it entirely clear to me why a certificate of lawfulness was being sought, and the only thing I could come up with is the extension which they want to kind of incorporate into this one might have been built without planning permission in the first place, although it would appear that what's there currently is in line with what's there on a number of existing properties anyway. The one thing I haven't managed to do, which I'd hoped to do, was actually to take a look at the property in 28 East Road, because I'm blowed if I can bring it to mind specifically, and try and work out in my own mind whether building an extension that kind of runs the full width of the frontage would or wouldn't really have any kind of adverse impact. The plans that are in seem to suggest that most of the other properties in the immediate vicinity have extensions similar to that which number 28 already has, but it looks as if this might be the first one to kind of go one step further. So anybody want to kick off on this one?
I don't have
I don't see that there's any problem. I think you're absolutely right, David, with the it's probably just bringing it up to legal standards, isn't it? Is this,
it does say proposed extension on the map.
There's no doubt that there is an extension, and as I say, I think what's triggered it is they wanted to build an extension, then looked and thought,
oh, David's gone.
Was David frozen? That's a bit when he said and thought.
Yeah, he's frozen deep in puzzlement there.
That's what makes these meetings so fun.
Well, I don't see that there's much to worry about with this personally.
No. Ooh.
I think, have we skipped a tree one, by the way?
There was a tree one above, which is not.
Yeah, 15 Milton Road. Yeah, I thought, oh my goodness, have I missed it?
Yeah, there is one.
Yeah, we'll have to go back to that one then.
Well, that'll be a tree off.
But that's another tree.
I know.
Anyway,
yeah.
So.
He'll be back in a minute.
Yeah. We don't know. It might be. There's been a lot of internet problems in there. recently, isn't there?
I'm just wondering why Val's struggling to get on all the time, because it's the
I
same
don't
link.
know. It was the same
Strange.
link. I tried every version of it and going at it different ways and everything.
Yeah,
Get in.
strange.
Yeah, no, it's the curse of the Zoomers. I'm afraid.
And the
Seems to be
Teamsters.
it seems to be the new thing now. Every meeting I've been on with other people, you get one person freeze up in the middle of a sentence and start making funny faces.
No, I actually think there's been issues with the broadband. The schools sent PWS sent an email the other day to parents to say, look, we've had issues. So that was on Friday, or was it yesterday? It was yesterday. And we've been having issues. I'm on BT broadband and it keeps turning off and on at the moment.
Oh,
Someone fiddling with a cable somewhere.
Isn't that the thing that they say never happens on BT broadband? You
Oh, well,
never
I must do it. I've been with all of them and I find BT the most reliable. So, and they do give you a little device when you do fall over, and then you can use it as a Wi-Fi. But trouble is, it's on 4G and it's not as efficient, but it still gets you online. And they give you. I've got 3 repeaters, so I've got 2. I've got 2 repeaters in the house because you're allowed up to 3 Wi-Fi thingies in your part of the deal. So they don't tell you that. You have to ask for it, and you can only get one at a time. But all my house has got, so they're really good. I find them the best.
No, that's all right then. Probably the car that went down the sinkhole has broken a cable or something.
Yeah, well, yeah.
That's worrying, isn't it?
Did you see the car when they dragged it out? I mean, that was even worrying.
Daniel took a picture of the sinkhole. It's a big sinkhole. Have you seen? You've seen it, at least.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was anything to do with the works. I think it was to do with all the floods. It just takes all the stuff underneath, doesn't it, that supports the road.
Well, it is. You see that along that whole, where that dip in the hill is, where Springfield Road is there's a whole huge spring line all the way along from the other side of St. Peter's, goes all the way along bottom of Rock Road, all the way across the whole landscape. And it's, I think, because we've had so much water recently this year and last year, it's just opened all the springs up and they've just been slowly undermining everything. So I wonder someone's house has slid down the hill.
Well, I said this the other day because I watched a programme on sinkholes, and when I walk the dog down New Road, it sounds like a river, an underwater river sometimes with the volume of water. And I remember saying to my friend when I was walking the dog, it wouldn't surprise me if a great big sinkhole opened up somewhere in the middle of New Road. And I said to her, I'm quite glad I live halfway down Rock Road that way, so I'm further away from it.
Yeah,
well, didn't we have a hole appear in New Road at one point? Or was that the drain? They had to fill it with loads of sand and everything.
Yeah.
I remember a hole appearing in the road.
Here we are.
Had to close the road.
He's back. He's
Hey.
back. Come on.
He's not there yet. Hello.
There he is. There's Anne.
It's Anne, yeah. It's Anne back.
You're back.
Sorry about that. I told you I was having problems with the internet this evening. Right. Well, what happened whilst I was away?
Nothing. We were just waiting for you.
Just chatting about sinkholes and
various
flooding problem.
Right. Well, I think I've more or less said everything I'd got to say about that particular application in any event. So
you need to go to Milton Road, David.
Sorry?
We forgot about the tree. The sweet chestnut.
There's another tree above the one we've just discussed on 15 Milton Road.
Chestnut.
I think I must have missed that one completely.
You did.
Well, we know what we're going to say.
Yeah.
I have no idea why I've missed that one off my list. How very strange. Looking at it, it would appear to be tree husbandry.
Absolutely.
And therefore, although I don't seem to have, I missed that. Although I don't seem to have put it on my report at all, I would have thought we just use our usual principles.
Absolutely.
Happy?
Most definitely.
Right. Well, sorry about that. So that was the one I missed out before the one about the certificate of lawfulness, which I was trying to talk about when I got cut off.
Got carried away.
Yeah. So, anybody got any thoughts about the extension at 28 East Road?
No,
No. I can't, as I say, I can't see any problem with it. I think it's, they're, retrospective and they're just, I think they're probably, as you say, trying to revamp it probably and bring it up to modernize it. And
If we say no problem, if the district council are running true to form, they will reject it. That's what we used to have that every time, didn't we, David?
Oh no, we've lost him again.
they do the opposite to what we did.
He's got stuck.
He's
Well-
in pause mode.
I think we can probably take it, Lisa, that we that there's
No objection.
I'm just looking at this next one.
And there's certainly no objection to the Holy Name of Jesus Church putting the railings up.
No, I don't think there's a.
And that brings us to the end anyway, doesn't it? Pretty much.
Yeah. Let's just see if he can get back in.
Is to prevent anyone falling down the high walls surrounding the church for health and safety.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see there could be any.
Well, I'm not exactly going to say no to that, are we?
Well, David's back again now, so.
I'm not a lot tonight. Or maybe it's just this particular application. Are we still talking about the East Road?
No, we've moved on.
We've moved on to the railings, have we?
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Holy Name of Jesus.
It has to be said that whilst I suppose technically a planning application is necessary, I couldn't see any real reason for us to get exercised by this one at all.
Exactly.
No objection?
No objection at all. I'm glad you saw exercised instead of exorcised
Yes, well,
and about the church.
yeah. Right, well, bearing in mind all the practical problems I seem to be having, it's probably as well that we seem to have got through the planning applications one way or another.
Whee!
Planning outcomes are all shown on
Yeah.
the agenda. Planning appeals, there aren't any. That seems to simply bring us on to any other relevant matters for report. I'll just work my way around the screen. Val, anything from you?
I had something and it's I've forgotten it, so I might remember.
Right,
Carry on.
I'll carry on and then see whether it occurs to you. Clive,
No, nothing.
David,
No,
we're sort of looking at you again, Val, because I can't think that I've got anything either.
No, I can't remember what it was, so it can't have been vital. I would have made a note if it was.
Well, you can always send an email round if you think of
Okay.
something. Anything from you, Lisa?
Nope.
Nope.
Thank you.
Well, on that basis, it seems to me that we can probably wrap up the meeting. So thank you all for your attendance.
Thank you once again for your notes, David. They're always very
yeah,
helpful.
thanks for everything.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure.
Well, at least it was only a tree I missed off, but I'm just
When we
slightly
quorum-
baffled as to how that happened.
What's the quorum for this meeting?
3.
3. So,
Yeah.
3 for planning, fortunately.
yeah.
Um,
Well, because when I couldn't get in, I thought, well, maybe they've packed up and gone home.
no.
Should I keep going?
Oh, well, we're pleased you did. We're pleased
Yeah,
you did.
good.
Right. Well, until next month.
Fine. Okay, bye everybody.
Take
Bye.
care.
Bye. See you later.
Bye.
What does this say? If yes, you'll receive an email notification.